Roger Douglas.
Mr. Speaker, the budget is now more than 2 months old, and it's becoming more obvious why the government didn't tackle some of New Zealand's main economic problems, including a lack of economic growth. It's clear that the government goes about its decision-making process in much the same way as the Labor Party did over its 9 years. And the reason, big problem, Mr. Speaker, we have is that the government always asks the wrong question. When faced with a major issue, the government asks the question of what can I get away with? What can I sell to the public? And when you ask that question, you will always come up with the wrong answer. The real question that should be asked is what should I do in relation to this particular policy area in the interest of the country? Having decided what one should do in the interest of the country, one then asks how one markets that to the public. And getting that around the wrong way has serious consequences. And I want to talk about one of those consequences today, and that is the consequence that it has on the poor and disadvantaged of this approach, because I believe it is extremely harmful. In fact, what makes me more cross than anything else is the way that National, Labor and the Maori and Green parties claim to want to help the poor and disadvantaged and then implement or advocate policies that do absolutely the opposite. So how do we deal with the issues of disadvantage? And the issues is the issue that I'd like to discuss this afternoon. I agree with other parties when they say that the key issues faced by the country include unemployment, race, crime, health, education, housing, welfare and the economy. Where I disagree with other parties is the way in which we solve these problems. The country simply cannot solve these issues by seeking short-term solutions over the next 3 or 18 months. None of these issues can be resolved, in my view, to the satisfaction of the public unless they are placed in a medium-term context. Because these issues are linked fundamentally and voters know it, they cannot be solved either if we look at them in isolation as we have done over the last 15 years. Poor parenting, lack of motivation, inadequate skills, alienation, unemployment, delinquency all reinforce each other. Low income, inadequate housing, poor health, lack of opportunity and lack of economic growth are all, Mr. Speaker, part of the same syndrome. In these circumstances, delivering real gains to disadvantaged people is crucial because that automatically delivers something of value to the rest or to everyone else. While income, Mr. Speaker, is obviously important to disadvantaged people, income in itself is not enough to remedy their situation. Their deeper need is for the incentive and for the opportunity to contribute more to society through their own efforts. By helping them to achieve independence and contribute more to society, we not only transfer their future but improve everyone else. These gains have an important role to play in creating dynamic growth economy, higher incomes for everyone and a fairer society. The alternative is a society with a permanent underclass, alienated people with no stake or prosperity or social harmony. That's one reason, Mr. Speaker, why the community as a whole is desperate to see a recovery of growth and investment needed to develop our future potential. The social cost of very low growth over the last 15 years has damaged the security and well-being of people at every level of society. Those costs, however, hit the disadvantaged harder than anyone else, but their reaction to disadvantage has an impact on everyone. Deep down, the public knows growth is the only way to get sustainable jobs and avoid an ongoing erosion of living standards and well-being. That necessarily, Mr. Speaker, involves a reduction in waste, inefficiency and avoidable burdens on those who create and contribute to growth. Yet, Mr. Speaker, Labor, National and other parties see any proposal to eliminate waste as a negative, not and one to be avoided at all costs. In other words, there will never be a solution to our problems while this mentality actually exists. If we truly want to help disadvantaged people, we need to end the vicious cycle we have at the moment, where the disadvantaged are often forced into education where they learn nothing. Life on a benefit, or unproductive jobs that simply perpetuate their problem. Until we recognise that scope for constructive personal choice is the basis to the dignity of human beings, we will simply not move ahead. The central feature of disadvantage is in fact not a lack of money or housing and so on. It is a total lack of choice. The disadvantaged need the kind of help, Mr. Speaker, that puts people on their feet, able to make a contribution and make gains for themselves in doing so. And we ignore the policies that can do that at our peril. The government has increasingly allowed, in my view, over the last 18 months, Labor and others to portray even the smallest attempt to change as seeking heartless efficiency at the expense of equity. Let us be clear, Mr. Speaker, about this. Without improvements in efficiency, improved equity is in fact impossible to achieve. Even the existing levels of equity come under increasing threat. Until New Zealand realise this economic fact, then New Zealand's relative decline of the last 15 years will continue. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, waste consumes resources which could otherwise have been available to improve equity levels throughout the community. Certainly everyone involved in wasting resources collects a rent, dividend or a pay packet, but they do so at the expense of the whole community. We need to be very clear about this. The benefits of privilege are concentrated in the hands of well-organised groups. For example, a lot of the help this House and the country provide Maori goes to a few and not the many, and this, Mr. Speaker, needs to change. The issue of helping Maori people is deeply interlocked with all the other issues of disadvantage at every level. Perceived equity in these circumstances is critical. The objective for Maori people must be to open up effective opportunities for them to share fully in the nation's future. Moreover, the need is to place them in a position to do so in a self-sustaining way based on their own skill and their own initiative. That is not simply or even fundamentally a question of righting past wrongs or restoring lost lands and fisheries to them. Complete justice based on the past, and Mr. Speaker, in my view, is impossible, and in attempting it, we must take care not to make bitterness a permanent feature of our race relation. Justice for Maori people has to be based on what will work best for them and the community for the rest of the century. Their central problem is a lack of knowledge and skill which are essential for self-esteem and success in the year 2010 and beyond. Unless that deficiency can be remedied, the Maori people will remain as they are at the moment, at a permanent disadvantage.
Order.